Hi everyone. Let's look into the process how to write user stories and add details to it, like acceptance criteria, subtask, test cases, and additional details. I brought you today an early phase product discovery application. I named it GrainChain. GrainChain is a digital grain marketplace for small farmers, a mobile first platform that connects small scale grain producers with their buyers directly, cutting out the middleman in the process and improving price transparency. I already included the key highlights about the solution I'm planning to build, their key features, and of course, the purpose to align anyone visiting my story map. So, what do I have? I started to collect potential user personas from different perspectives who will be interacting with this platform. Currently, I'm focusing on Samuel, who is a grain producer. Samuel's goal is to maximize his profit by selling his product online through GrainChain platform. I visualized a few user journey from Samuel's perspective. His goal would be registering on the platform or listing his crops. Visualizing the user journey on the story map will help the team to trigger communication and easier identify related tasks and user stories that should be addressed in order to complete certain features and help the user accomplish his goal. With that said, let's start the user story collection process. I'm using StoriesOnBoard AI assistant so it can help me brainstorm user stories for every single step in the user journey by a single click. The first step in the user journey that we are focusing on is to create account with details. StoriesOnBoard AI Assistant can help us brainstorming user stories for the particular step in the user journey. Registering with email and password, providing farm details, uploading identification documents, selecting preferred language, and agreeing with terms and conditions would be all relevant when creating a new account on GrainChain. The selected user stories already added to our product backlog. But what is exactly a user story? A user story is a brief non-technical description or feature or functionality from the perspective of the end user, in our case Samuel, who wished to register on the platform and complete the process. User stories help teams understand and prioritize user requirements. For example, uploading identification documents wouldn't be necessary as a mandatory step in the initial registration process. It could be something that we can prioritize for later once the account is created successfully and filled with information. Before enabling selling crops on the platform, it would be required to provide identification documentations. Let's take a closer look at the user story. Registering with email and password is a very broad definition of this user story. Writing the user story from the end user perspective will benefit for all stakeholders taking place in the project, both from business and from the technical side. You can write your user story and describe its details from a user point of view, or you can also ask StoriesOnBoard AI Assistant to do it for you. Writing the user story with StoriesOnBoard AI, it will follow a commonly accepted template. As a certain user or given user persona, I want a goal, so that reason. Now we can see that is exactly happened here. As a grain producer, I want to register with my email and password so that I can create an account and start selling my crops directly to the buyers. We can accept this or we can refine it if we need additional details to it. Let me accept it for this round. By reading this user story, we can see exactly what is the goal of our user and what is the benefit that he gains. Now that we have our user story defined, we also need to identify acceptance criteria, which is a set of conditions that must be met for a product or increment of work, or in our case, user story, to be considered complete and acceptable by stakeholders. There are many different perspectives how we can make sure that this user story will be accepted by stakeholders and will represent that exact state when we say done. In order to do that, we need to also identify and align the team around the acceptance criteria system. We can collect many different acceptance criteria for a user story. It could be from the perspective of UX and UI capabilities, risk, security, or even technical and non-technical perspective. For this example, we are going to use StoriesOnBoard AI Assistant once again. I'm focusing on acceptance criteria creation from the standpoint of technical and non-technical requirements. The AI assistant already listed that for me. I can refine the result, asking the AI to include additional focus points, for example UX and UI requirements, or add additional information. I can also accept this and add it to the details of my user story to help my stakeholders to understand what we are expecting to be delivered and how. If you are using StoriesOnBoard AI Assistant in your project, you have the capability to configure how the AI assistant should generate the content for you. You can select between the predefined templates for user stories or acceptance criteria, and the AI assistant will act according to that and consistently give you the right result. Following these templates, you are also able to set your own template, customizing the acceptance criteria regarding to your own specific requirements. It is also possible, however, to create custom AI templates. For example, writing test cases, my team has a very specific approach that they follow on this particular project. We need to identify the test case idea, the title of the test case, precondition, steps, expected result, and postcondition. By giving this template to the AI assistant, I'm able to call it in on any user story on the board. Let's take a look at this as well. If we are opening the user story that we were working with, now I can access the custom AI templates I have already created and ask to run the right test cases, for example. As you can see, the AI assistant followed the exact structure how I want the test cases to be generated for my team, with title, preconditions, steps, and it goes on and on. You are able to also customize and fully describe your own test case structure with scenarios and all the details, then the AI assistant will follow that for you, and you can add it to the user story details supporting your QA and tester team. You can create your own custom AI templates. It could be anything, for example, regarding to error checking hand list. We prompt the AI assistant to take a look at this user story and come up with the error handling checklist. It follows our example and structure that we use with the team and generated the content according to that. You can accept it, and it will be also added to the description of your user story. You can use your imagination and start creating custom AI templates to support your team the most, starting from splitting advice from the AI assistant, collecting subtasks and test cases, improving user stories by suggestions, and many more. Implementing StoriesOnBoard AI Assistant into your product management workflow will help you maximize your effort during product discovery and your backlog management activities. You can ask the AI assistant to brainstorm user stories for your backlog and creating them, adding critical details to the user story itself, defining by acceptance criteria, test cases, subtasks, and many other perspectives you can utilize through custom AI templates. It's also capable to brainstorm user personas for your project, filling out their details, creating high-level user goals from a given user persona point of view, mapping out the user journey, or even pointing out gaps in the journey itself. You can make sure that you deliver better results for your users at all time. StoriesOnBoard AI Assistant is always there and it's always context-aware. Now it's your turn to try it out and build an amazing solution for your customers.